Everyone, good morning. Welcome back to Department 1. People versus Robert Durst. Our jurors and alternates are present. Mr. Durst is here with Mr. Chesnoff and Mr. DeGuerin, Mr. Bailey, Mr. Lewin, Mr. Miata, Mr. Henderson, and probably Mr. Milius, but I don't see him.
He's not here.
No, Mr. Milius, but appearing for the people. And Mr. Lewis is here in the back. All right, for the defendant. Mr. Lewin, how do you wish to proceed?
We're going to be starting with, and we just wanted to explain to the court how we're doing this. We're going to be starting with, there's a number of witnesses from Galveston from that trial where there have been stipulations with the defense. The stipulations are different than what we have done before, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reading in, minus any inadmissible parts, objections, etc., the testimony of witnesses. So what will happen is that there'll be somebody reading the witness's testimony. There'll be somebody reading the prosecutor, somebody reading the defense attorney, somebody reading the judge. So we just want to make sure that the jurors understand that although we're reading it, none of us are actually asking any of these questions now. We're just going back in a time machine and duplicating what happened in Galveston. So the first such witness will be starting today.
And now, are these, will the transcripts be marked as exhibits?
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Will the transcripts be marked as exhibits, or are these simply read into the record?
Yeah, I think the plan is that they would be read into the record. We can certainly, as a court's exhibit, if the court wants it, we can mark the transcript. And in fact, we're certainly willing to stipulate. I don't think it's necessary to have the court reporter transcribe all over again what's going to be an exact duplication of the testimony that's being put in, minus whatever interruptions the lawyers might have here today. We would certainly stipulate to that process if the defense and the court will.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think we treat it the same as if it were videotaped testimony, except it's right a reading rather than a recording.
Yeah.
So I think we can, if we all agree, we can spare the reporters or the reporter that part.
So then, for the record, we should probably mark a copy in case it ever needs to be read back, right?
Yes, that's right. You can mark a copy. The only question is whether you want to supply that to Mr. Durst, or do we need the court reporter to transcribe
I think
the reading?
if the young lady that helps him
Yes.
hear by reading, I think we should continue that.
Okay, that's what you'll do.
Thank you.
Very well. So the person reading the witness's statement ought to sit at the witness stand. All right.
Okay.
The persons reading the prosecuting and defense attorney portions may be seated at counsel table, as may the person who is reading the judge. If the judge says anything in these, then you may designate for the jury who will be reading those portions. And who you've already figured that out. Who will those persons be?
So this morning, for the witness David Avina, we have present to read for the prosecuting attorney's part. We have some law students here. Cameron Young, come on up. And for the witness, it will be Courtney Taylor. And there's, unfortunately, the court on this reading has a very small role. The prosecuting
That's best. Smaller is better. Keep that in mind.
prosecuting attorney, Mr. Cameron Young, would just read the court's part as well.
All right, and you'll designate the court. You'll just say the court, so the jury knows that it's the court speaking rather than the.
You know, do you want the witness in the witness box?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
And obviously, you know, these roles are not assigned, so the witness was actually a male, and that's not who was playing the witness.
Yeah. So
Your Honor,
The jury should understand that.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
that there's no issue of credibility. We're all watching and make sure they read exactly what the testimony was at that Galveston trial.
Your Honor, we want Mr. Lewin to be the defense lawyer.
You're gonna have to up my salary, Mr. Chestnut.
That would be refreshing, and of course, there are other places where, like in the United Kingdom, a prosecutor or defender might be depending on the case, might have that different role, which is, I think, very, very interesting and a good thing. So,
And I did forget to mention, I apologize. Mr. DeGuerin will read the part of the defense attorney, which was in this case Chip Lewis.
okay, I think you can do Lewis. We have Mr. Lewis in the back.
Yeah, we do it.
Okay, all right. As you wish.
Mr. Guerin will stand on something. He'll.
Okay, so
Chip's a big guy.
come on up. Take the witness stand, please. Thank you. Would you like, is it okay if he stands at the podium, or would you like him seated?
No, at the lectern is fine.
Outside the lectern, yeah.
That's fine. So this is the testimony of David Avina.
Yes. May I mark the transcript next in order, Madam Clerk? What number are we on?
Courts Exhibit 6.
Or is this going to be a courts exhibit?
This should be a courts exhibit because it would not go to the jury, Your Honor. This would be treated like testimony where if they end up
Right,
with
that's
questions.
right. You could have, I see, and if readback were necessary, the document would be read back.
Right.
We
Yes, Your
we
Honor.
agree with that.
Okay.
All
So,
right,
court
give me
6?
the Courts Exhibit 6.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is from the September 22, 2003, Galveston County, Texas. Do you, anything else?
No, thank you.
And the prosecutor is Mr. Sistrunk.
Yes, I'm sorry, we should say that. The prosecutor was Mr. Sistrunk, Sistrunk. The witness was David Avina, David, Avina. And Mr. Lewis was the defense attorney for this particular witness.
And the Honorable Susan Chris, Judge of the 212th District Court. All right.
Thank you. You may begin.
David Avina, having first and duly sworn, testified as follows. Sir, could you please state your name for the record?
David Avina.
How are you employed?
I'm a nurse.
And speak right into the microphone so that I can hear you. You can pull the microphone forward towards you and tip it a little bit towards you. Up towards you. There. I think that will work better.
And where do you work as a nurse?
At Surgical Intensive Care at UTMB.
And how long have you been in that capacity?
About 3 years.
And where do you live, sir?
7909 Channelview.
Is that within the city of Galveston?
Yes, it is.
Are you with family, or do you live alone, or what?
I live with my wife and my 5 children.
I want to direct your attention, sir, back to September 30th of 2001. Do you have a little recollection of where you were on that day in that evening?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Can you tell us whether or not you had occasion to go fishing at the pier in that area, in the area of 81st Street and Channelview?
Yes.
Who did you go with?
I went with my stepson and my daughter.
Okay. And do you remember approximately what time you went to that area to fish?
It was about 6 or 6:30.
Do you remember anything about the weather at that time of the evening?
It was a beautiful day. It was clear, the water was calm. In fact, I didn't think I was going to go fishing. But after I saw the water, I thought, yeah, maybe I will.
Was there anybody else out there fishing when you arrived?
There was just us.
Had you been out there previously the day before?
Yes, about that same time, my nephew and my stepson went fishing. And I did see a Wade fisherman out there. It was about 6 o'clock the day before.
And the day before, that would have been Saturday, correct?
That's right.
When you were out there Saturday, did you notice anything unusual floating in the water or anything?
No, and I tell you, I remember looking in that direction too, and the Wade fisherman was coming out of the water. And we turned around to see if he had caught anything. And we looked in that direction, and no, there wasn't. There wasn't anything unusual.
So, it was you on Sunday then, you, your stepson, and your daughter.
And my daughter.
And how long were y'all out there, approximately?
I was out there maybe 5 minutes, and they had come up on their bikes, and it all happened pretty fast. So we were out there maybe 6 or 7 minutes. It didn't take long. We just left in a hurry.
When you say it didn't take long, would you share with us what you are referring to? Any personal observations you may have made?
Well, my stepson gave me the fishing rods, so kind of in a peripheral vision, I could see him looking over the bulkhead. And just as quick as it takes for him to give it to me, for him to go see if there's any minnows to catch with the cast net, he called back, "There's a pig in the water." And as soon as he got that out, he said, "No, it's a body, David. It's a body." And he just said it so flat like that, I didn't look. I didn't look up, or I didn't go in that direction. But my daughter looked over the bulkhead and she screamed out, "I don't want to see anymore." And she turned around, jumped on the bike, and took off, and I mean in a flash. And that's when I looked up and I looked angry at him, and I said, "You better not be fooling around." And I walked towards him. We both looked over, and he kind of motioned his head at what we had seen. We both looked over. We looked at each other and looked back again, and then we left. So,
What was it that you saw floating in the water?
initially when I looked over, I just noticed the white. It was a naked man, and he had no legs and arms and no head, but he was floating on his back. And because he was a man, I could tell this was a human body. And I glanced back down again, and I noticed, I guess it had set in at that time, this is a person. It has no arms and legs and head, and in a fishing spot that we go to almost every day. We either walk out there, skip rocks, we go out there every day. We just looked at each other. And I told him to call his mother, to go tell his mother to call the police. And I think I saw the body maybe about less than 10 seconds, just glances. It was just horrifying.
Did the police arrive at the scene? Were you still there?
No, he took off on his bike and he met me home. When I went home, I grabbed the cordless and took it out to the driveway, and that's when I called the police.
Slow down, please.
Okay, do you want me to go back?
No, it's okay. Go slow from now.
No, he took off on his bike and he met me home. When I went home, I grabbed the cordless and took it out to the driveway, and that's when I called the police. They arrived less than 5 minutes later. It didn't take long at all.
And did you have occasion to go back to the scene where you saw the torso floating?
He gave us a ride back over there, but we didn't see it anymore. We didn't when he stopped the car and asked us where it was. We just kind of motioned, "It's over there." We didn't go close enough to see it again.
When you say he, are you referring to the police officer that arrived at your house?
Yes.
Were you ever asked, or was your son ever asked, to give a statement, or were you ever interviewed by the police in any way?
At that point, no.
At a subsequent time?
Yes.
Do you recall if you ever gave a written statement, or you just spoke generally to them and they just recorded it?
I think it was just generally. Nothing. It was almost like a conversation. Of course, he was writing things down, but I don't remember giving a formal, if that's what it is, just asking me questions, and I was answering them.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor? The court responds yes. Sir, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 200. Does this represent the scene as you saw it on the evening you gave testimony to?
Yes, sir, it is.
Offer State's 200, Your Honor. The court responds, it's admitted, you may proceed. Thank you, Your Honor. State passes the witness.
No questions, Your Honor.
The court responds, all right, sir, you are excused.
Next witness?
Your Honor. we have a, I don't know I think it would be a good idea, we have an exhibit correlation sheet.
Yes, yes.
And so the exhibit that was marked as States 200, may we mark it in this trial as are we on 181?
Just a moment.
Okay, so may I mark this exhibit correlation sheet as People's 181 and the exhibit as People's 181A?
Yeah.
Thank you. Nothing further for this particular witness, Your Honor.
And now the next.
We have a stipulation. It's original stipulation 28. May I mark this as People's 182?
Yes.
Counsel, do you stipulate as follows? The body and/or body parts recovered from Galveston Bay, in this case near 81st Street and Channelview Drive in Galveston, Texas, on September 30th, 2001, is the body and/or body parts of decedent Morris Black. So stipulated?
Yes.
Thank you.
What stipulation number was that? 20 what?
7.
7, thank you.
Okay, Your Honor, I
Did
have.
you just say stipulation? I thought you said 28 was 182. It's 27 is 182?
Yes, I'm sorry, 27. I
Okay.
misspoke.
And it's People's 182, but it's the 27 stipulation. Yeah. So another transcript?
I'm sorry?
Another transcript or more photos?
No, I have another stipulation.
Okay.
I need to. Okay. So, Your Honor, I have a stipulation. May I mark this as People's 183?
Yes.
And I have, okay, stipulation 183 encompasses stipulations 28, 32, and 57.
Thank you.
And I have a stack of photographs, a stack of documents. There's 180 pages to this document, and the pages are numbered 1 through 180. May I mark this stack of photographs as People's 184?
Yes.
All right, this is going to be a doozy.
It's
14-page stipulation.
All right.
I'll read it and then ask you to stipulate at the end, counsel. Sergeant Gary Jones is a sworn peace officer with the Galveston Police Department. On September 30th, 2001, he was assigned as a sergeant, assigned as a supervisor in the Identification Division, and he was assigned to assist in the investigation involving the death and dismemberment of Morris Black. As of that date, he had been a peace officer for 13 years and assigned to the Identification Bureau for 11 years. He has an extensive background and training in the collection and processing of physical evidence. On September 30th, 2001, shortly after the first police officers responded, Sergeant Jones arrived at the concrete bulkhead and rock jetty located at 81st Street and Channelview in Galveston, Texas. Photo 1 here on the screen depicts this area. The red circle on photo 1 depicts the concrete bulkhead and rocky jetty where Sergeant Jones first responded. Photos 2 through 8 are further aerial photographs, which also fairly and accurately depict this area. What photo is this? Photos 2 through 5. I'll go back. Tell me when I'm on 2. So photos 2 through 5 are photographs which were taken in 2003. 2, 3, 4, 5. Those were all taken in 2003. The circled area in photo 1 is the specific area where most of the body parts and torso were recovered. Photos 6 through 8 are aerial photographs taken at different points in time after different houses had been built on the concrete bulkhead and in the surrounding area since 2001. These are afterwards, after houses had been built. The colored markings on photos 6 and 7, were made by expert witness Ben Hodges. He will testify later in this trial. When Sergeant Jones arrived, he observed a male torso, who he later had discovered to be the torso of Morris Black, floating halfway in the water and halfway on rocks at the end of 81st Street at the end of the bulkhead. Photos 9 and photos 10 fairly and accurately depict the location of this torso as Sergeant Jones arrived. There was also a blue bed sheet and a white pair of underwear with the elastic band cut in multiple places in the water near the torso. Photo 11 depicts this blue bed sheet in the water near the torso as Sergeant Jones arrived. The blue bed sheet and white underwear were removed from the water and placed onto the concrete bulkhead. Photos 12 through 14 depict this bed sheet and underwear on the bulkhead after they had been removed from the water. Sergeant Jones also observed 5 black plastic trash bags floating in the water at the northwest end of the bulkhead. Photo 15 fairly and accurately depicts these bags in the water as Sergeant Jones arrived. Photo 16 fairly and accurately depicts the location where the torso and bags were seen by Sergeant Jones, and fairly and accurately labels the location where the torso and where the bags were first observed. Sergeant Jones removed the 5 plastic bags from the water, as well as the torso, and he placed the items onto the pier. 2 of the bags appeared to contain items. Upon feeling the bags from the outside, Sergeant Jones believed these items were arms and legs. One of the bags appeared to contain a leg, and there was a toe visible poking through a hole in the bag. Photos 17 and 18 fairly and accurately depict this bag. The remaining 3 bags appeared to be empty. A 6th black plastic bag was recovered from the first cove west of the area where the torso and the other 5 bags were found. It was approximately 500 paces to the west and had washed up onto the adjacent shore. The circled area on photo 19 fairly and accurately depicts the cove where this bag was found. This is photo 19. When I say photo 19, it's page 19 in this exhibit. Photo 20 fairly and accurately depicts this bag as it appeared when it was first found. Morris Black's torso, the 6 black plastic bags, the blue sheet, and the white underwear were turned over to the medical examiner and transported to the coroner's office for examination and analysis. Sergeant Jones coordinated a search of the remaining shoreline of the coves to the west of the location where the bags and torso were found, all the way to the railroad tracks, as well as an extensive search of the shoreline to the east. Among other evidence, Sergeant Jones was looking for Morris Black's head. Upon feeling the bags at the scene, Sergeant Jones felt a total of 2 arms and 2 legs, but no head. During this shoreline search, no further evidence of significance was found, including the dismembered head. Photo 21 fairly and accurately depicts the cove where the torso was found at low tide. Sergeant Jones then went to the coroner's office and was present when the bags were opened and inventoried by Dr. Charles Harvey. Each of the 3 bags containing body parts consisted of a bag tied with an overhand knot, within a bag tied with an overhand knot, within a bag tied with an overhand knot. In other words, the bags were triple bagged and tied. In the first triple bag that was opened, which was referenced bag 1 by the coroner, Sergeant Jones recovered a right human arm, a left human arm, a portion of a shirt, and a red flip-flop sandal. Photo 22 fairly and accurately depicts the contents of this bag. The second triple bag they opened, which was referenced bag 2, was the bag recovered from the cove 500 paces to the west of the torso and other bags. This bag contained a large quantity of sand, a right human leg, a blue plastic cup containing several pieces of white plastic silverware, and a beige-colored napkin, a paper sack containing a white sales receipt from Chalmers hardware store, and a small plastic bag containing numerous small blood-stained towels. Photo 23 fairly and accurately depicts some of the items within bag 2 as it was opened. Photo 24 fairly and accurately depicts a photograph of the blue plastic cup and its contents after they were removed from bag 2. Photo 25 fairly and accurately depicts the white plastic bag and its contents after they were removed from bag 2. Photos 26 through 28 fairly and accurately depict the brown paper bag and Chalmers receipt after they were removed from bag 2. The Chalmers receipt was dated September 29, 2001, with a sale time of 4:17 p.m. The items purchased included 42-gallon trash bags and drop cloths. Photo 29 fairly and accurately depicts the right human leg contained within bag 2. The third triple bag they opened, which was referenced as bag 3, contained a left human leg, plastic packaging material for a drop cloth, and a collection of papers. Photo 30 fairly and accurately depicts a partial view of the items seen within bag 3 as it was first opened. The papers included a newspaper addressed to, quote, resident at 2213 Avenue K, Galveston, Texas, end quote. Photos 31 through 32 fairly and accurately depict the newspaper found within bag 3. The papers also included a cardboard blade cover for a Green Thumb brand bow saw blade. Photos 33 through 37 fairly and accurately depict the bow saw blade cover that was recovered from bag 3. Photo 38 fairly and accurately depicts the drop cloth packaging that was recovered from bag 3. The fourth bag they opened, which was referenced as bag 4, was tied into a knot but empty. There was a hole in the bag. Photo 39 fairly and accurately depicts this bag. The fifth bag they opened, which was referenced as bag 5, was tied in a knot but empty. There was a large hole and a medium-sized hole in the bag. Photos 40 through 41 fairly and accurately depict this bag. The sixth bag they opened was also tied into a knot but empty. There was a large hole and multiple smaller holes in the bag. Photo 42 fairly and accurately depicts this bag. The three empty bags were not triple bagged. They were individual bags tied in knots found floating in the water. They were, however, consistent with having been previously contained within each other in the same fashion as the other three bags that contained the body part. Each bag had at least one hole approximately 2.5 to 3 feet wide. These holes were much larger than and inconsistent with the size of the smaller holes in the other bags containing the body part. Sergeant Jones believed that these large holes were consistent with being torn apart by a human or from being ripped on the rocks or oyster shells. On October 2nd, 2001, 2 days later, a trash can container bearing ID number U9621515 was recovered by Officer Herman Hilton from the alley in the rear of 2213 Avenue K in Galveston, Texas. This was the same address that was seen on the newspaper inside bag 3. The plastic bag containing the human left severed leg as depicted in photo 31. This trash can container is depicted in photo 43. On October 2nd, 2001, Sergeant Jones searched this trash can container at the police impound garage. Sergeant Jones recovered several large black plastic trash bags from this trash can container. These bags were consistent with the type, size, material, and color of the trash bags containing the body parts of Morris Black. Photos 44 through 46 show some of the contents of one of these bags. Photo am I on? Okay. Many items in these bags contain Morris Black's blood. These bags contain the following items, among other items of miscellaneous trash. Number 1, numerous paper hand towels and napkins, consistent with the hand towels and napkins recovered from the bags containing Morris Black's body parts. Number 2, several blue plastic drinking cups, consistent with the ones recovered from the bags containing Morris Black's body parts. These blue cups are depicted in photo 47. Number 3, a valet parking ticket for the Four Seasons Hotel with the name Durst, R. on the back. The front and back of this parking ticket are depicted in photos 48 and 49. The top oval section, number 4, the top oval section of a trash bag box. This is depicted in photo 50. Number 5, an empty Bank of America money envelope. This is depicted in photo 40. This is depicted in photo 51. Number 6, a receipt from Dr. Ray B. Matocha, Matocha, for Robert Durst. This is depicted in photo 52. Number 7, a USA Today newspaper dated October 1st, 2001. Number 7, a San Luis Spa and Conference Center laundry bag. This is depicted in photo 53. Number 9, a portion of packaging for Latex Gloves. This is depicted in photo 54. Number 10, a letter of intent to not renew lease dated July 13th, 2001 from Klaus Dillman to Morris Black. This letter is depicted in photo 55. This letter did not contain any bullet holes. Number 11, a hotel guest vehicle parking ticket for a silver Honda CR-V, license plate B88TKH, and displaying the name Durst. This is depicted in photo 56. Number 12, a latex glove. This latex glove contained Morris Black's blood. This glove is depicted in photo 57. Number 13, numerous clothing items, including a pair of white underwear, which matched the brand, size, and cuts to the waistband of the white underwear recovered from Galveston Bay near the torso. Number 14, packaging material for a 9x12 drop cloth bearing a yellow and white price tag from Chalmers Hardware. This packaging material is depicted in photos 58 and 59. Number 15, an empty True Value hardware box for 42-gallon black plastic trash bag. This box is depicted in photos 60 and 61. Number 16, packaging for an, quote, Old Hickory, end quote, brand paring knife. The front and back of this packaging is depicted in photos 62 and 63. Number 17, a .22 caliber expended bullet casing. This is depicted in photo 64. Number 18, a Ruger .22 caliber model 22/24 semi-automatic handgun bearing serial number 223-51668. No magazine was inserted into the weapon and no ammunition was in the chamber. This weapon is depicted in photo 65, and People's Exhibit 163 is this actual weapon. People's 163 was previously marked, Your Honor.
Yes.
This handgun was registered to defendant and was purchased on August the 30th, 2001. 19, a .22 caliber magazine containing nine live .22 caliber bullets. This magazine is depicted in photo 66. Number 20, a .22 caliber magazine containing 8 live .22 caliber bullets. This magazine is depicted in photo 67. Number 21, a clear plastic Ziploc bag containing 54 live .22 caliber bullets. This item is depicted in photo 68. Number 22, a brown paper envelope containing 312 live .22 caliber bullets. This item is depicted in photo 69. There were no bottles of alcohol found within this trash can container. 1 was Morris Black's apartment. Upon entering apartment 1, Sergeant Jones discovered that the apartment consisted of a living room, a dining room / kitchen area, and a bathroom. There was a bed in the living room area. Except for the rolled paper on the carpet, which Sergeant Jones laid down, photos 85 through 88 fairly and accurately depict the condition of the living room area when Sergeant Jones arrived. Black trash bags were found on the floor at the foot of the bed. Photo 89 fairly and accurately depicts these trash bags. There was a small closet on the east side of the room with assorted tools noted on the floor of the closet. Photo 90 fairly and accurately depicts these tools. The kitchen / dining room of the apartment was accessed through a walk-through opening from the living room. Located within this room were 2 tables, a round table, and a square table. Except for the rolled paper Sergeant Jones laid down onto the floor, except for that paper, photos 92 through 96 fairly and accurately depict the condition of the kitchen when Sergeant Jones arrived. Number man. He found a wood-handled paring knife and a razor blade on the top of the square table. The wood handle contained dark-colored stains. Photo 97 fairly and accurately depicts this knife. Inside the kitchen, Sergeant Jones also found a bottle of bleach and a bottle of ammonia. There was also the financial section of the Houston Chronicle, dated September 28, 2001, lying on the kitchen floor. The bathroom was accessed through a door from the kitchen. Inside the bathroom, Sergeant Jones found a mop bucket on the floor, cleaning utensils, milk jugs made into cleaning-type buckets, paper towels lying on top of the toilet tank, and a mop lying in the bathroom sink. Photos 98 through 104 fairly and accurately depict the condition of the bathroom. There were no obvious signs of blood inside apartment 1 visible to the naked eye. However, Sergeant Jones utilized fluorescein and an alternate light source to check for the presence of trace amounts of blood. Using this method, Sergeant Jones discovered evidence of blood in the kitchen sink, on a mop in the bathroom, and in the shower. Sergeant Jones also processed the entire apartment for fingerprints, but did not find any. This was highly unusual in Sergeant Jones's experience as an identification officer. He usually finds some fingerprints when he processes living quarters. The apartment contained no personal type items identifying Morris Black. None of Mr. Black's personal effects nor clothing were found within the apartment. The next day, on October 4th, 2001, Sergeant Jones entered and searched apartment 2. Apartment 2 was defendant's apartment. Apartment 2 consisted of a combination living room / dining room / bedroom, a kitchen with a closet, and a bathroom. Upon entering apartment 2, the first room you enter is the living room / dining room / bedroom. Inside this room, there was shag-type carpeting. Along the north wall of the room were 2 canvas camping chairs, separated by a television on the floor with a VCR on top of it. There was also a small stepping stool / ladder with an alarm clock and phone books on top of it. Photo 105 fairly and accurately depicts a view from the inside of apartment 2, looking out the front door into the common hallway of the residence. Photo 106 fairly and accurately depicts the items along the north wall. Photo 107 fairly and accurately depicts the items on top of one of the canvas chairs. There was a latex glove, a set of keys, Scotch tape, and a length of leather rope. The latex glove contained trace amounts of Morris Black's blood. Photo 108 fairly and accurately depicts the step stool ladder. Along the west wall of the living room was a round wooden dining table with a swivel-type chair, a wood chair, and a lamp. The wood chair was positioned in the kitchen when Sergeant Jones arrived. Photos 109 through 111 fairly and accurately depict the items along the west wall of the living room. On the top of the wood table, Sergeant Jones found a USA Today newspaper dated October 1st, 2001, a stack of napkins, a notepad from Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, 2 remote controls, a green ink pen, a pack of Marlboro Lights, and a book of matches. These items are fairly and accurately depicted in photographs 112 through 116. Positioned along the east wall of the living room was a full-size bed. The bed was completely made up and had no signs that it had been recently slept in. Photos 117 through 118 depict the east side of the living room. There were no signs of blood visible to the naked eye in the living room / bedroom / dining room area. Your Honor, should I continue, or what time would you like to break?
Between 10:15 and 10:30. How are you doing?
Bye.
How are you doing? We can go a little, if there's a logical break, we can, in between now and 10:30,
Sure.
or at 10:30,
Okay.
but no later than that.
Thank you.
The jury is aware, because of the agreement with counsel on this, this literally would probably have been 2 days of testimony, so we.
No, I'm grateful to counsel for reaching this agreement. I encourage you to do it, and I'm grateful that you have. Thank you.
Thank
So continue, please.
Thank you. From the living room / bedroom area, a large open doorway leads into the kitchen. At this threshold, the carpeting stops and transitions to linoleum flooring. This doorway is fairly and accurately depicted in photos 119 and 120. Sergeant Jones discovered beige-colored drop cloths covering the majority of the kitchen floor. Underneath the drop cloth, Sergeant Jones observed numerous sharp cuts to the linoleum flooring. These cuts are fairly and accurately depicted in photo 121. The linoleum flooring was removed, and there was a saturation-type stain consistent with blood on the plywood subfloor directly underneath the cuts to the linoleum. DNA testing established that this was Morris Black's blood. There was no obvious blood visible to the naked eye on the top of the linoleum floor or on the drop cloth. As you enter the kitchen from the living room, you walk through the kitchen and through another open doorway into the bathroom. On the right side of the bathroom doorway, there is a kitchen counter, sink, and kitchen cabinets. On the left-hand side of the bathroom doorway, there is a gas range, cabinets, and a closet. The bathroom doorway is fairly and accurately depicted in photos 122 and 123. The kitchen counters and sink are fairly and accurately depicted in photo 124. The gas range, cabinets, and kitchen closet are fairly and accurately depicted in photos 125 through 128. The following items of evidence were collected from the kitchen area. Number 1, blue plastic drinking cups. These were collected from on top of the refrigerator and are fairly and accurately depicted in photo 129. A brown paper True Value hardware bag. This bag was recovered from the kitchen floor in front of the oven range. It contained a water bottle, napkins, a Q-tip, and other trash items. This bag and its contents are fairly and accurately depicted in photos 130 through 131. Number 3, a box of True Value 42-gallon black plastic trash bags and a shower curtain. These items were located adjacent to the oven range and are fairly and accurately depicted in photos 132 and 133. The price tag on the box of trash bags was from Chalmers Hardware Store. A plate containing can openers and 3 knives. These items were located on the kitchen counter and are fairly and accurately depicted in photos 134 through 135. Number 5, a mop from the kitchen closet. A small amount of blood spatter was observed on the bottom of the north kitchen wall, the trim board, and the base molding. This area of the wall was removed and preserved for testing and analysis. This was Morris Black's blood. Photo 136 fairly and accurately shows the area of the wall, trim board, and baseboards that were cut out and preserved. Each area of blood spatter on the removed portions of the wall was then circled and numbered. Photos 137 through 161 fairly and accurately depict the blood spatter on these items. The items depicted in photos 137 through 161 were transported to crime scene reconstructionist and blood pattern interpretation expert Tom Bevel for analysis. Sergeant Jones also searched the bathroom area. The bathroom floor was covered in drop cloth. Photos 162 through 167 fairly and accurately depict the bathroom area. There were visible blood drops on the drop cloth on the bathroom floor. These are depicted in photo 165. Sergeant Jones processed the entire apartment 2 for trace amounts of blood not visible to the naked eye using fluorescein and an alternate light source. He discovered trace amounts of blood on the brown living room carpet leading from the kitchen out the front door. DNA testing established that this was Morris Black's blood. He also found evidence of blood in the bathtub. Sergeant Jones processed the entire apartment 2 for fingerprints. In the entire apartment, he only found one fingerprint on the toilet seat. So on October 9th, 2001, I have a page and a half left, Your Honor. Sergeant Jones heard a radio broadcast that defendant's vehicle was stopped by Officer David Thomas near 13th Street and Avenue J in Galveston. Defendant was the driver and lone occupant of the vehicle. Sergeant Jones went to the area of the stop and saw a defendant being detained by officers near his Honda CR-V, license B88-TKH. Sergeant Jones had this vehicle secured and towed to the impound garage. Sergeant Jones subsequently searched this vehicle pursuant to a search warrant. Photo 168 fairly and accurately depicts this vehicle at the time of the search. From the rear trunk area of this vehicle, Sergeant Jones recovered a tennis racket, a package of blue plastic cups, and an Ames brand bow saw. These items are fairly and accurately depicted in photos 169 through 172. The rear trunk area carpet also had numerous red blood stains. Sergeant Jones marked and labeled these stains. These markings are depicted in photo 173. This was Morris Black's blood. From a compartment located in the rear tailgate, Sergeant Jones recovered a black case containing a Browning 9mm semi-automatic handgun and an extra magazine loaded with 4 rounds of ammunition. These items are fairly and accurately depicted in photos 174 through 178. Photo 177 is a photograph of People's Exhibit 164, and that's the handgun we already have in evidence. From the center console area, Sergeant Jones recovered a green ink pen and a black wallet. Inside the wallet, Sergeant Jones found 23 $100 bills, 2 rolled marijuana cigarettes, an American Express card in the name of Robert Durst, a Texas driver's license in the name of Robert Durst, and a Bank of America Platinum check card in the name of Robert Durst. These items are depicted in photo 179. From the dashboard ashtray, Sergeant Jones recovered a Marlboro Lights package of cigarettes. From a front dashboard compartment, Sergeant Jones recovered a Young's dry cleaning receipt for a blanket. This is fairly and accurately depicted in photo 180. From the front driver's door pocket, Sergeant Jones recovered a receipt from the Holiday Inn Express, as well as guest information paperwork from that same hotel, indicating room 208. On October 9th, 2001, Sergeant Jones searched room 208 of the Holiday Inn Express in Galveston, Texas. The room had been rented by defendant on October 8th, 2001, under the alias of Jim Tuss, T-U-S-S. It contained some of defendant's clothes and other personal items. So stipulated? Thank you.
That stipulation.
Your Honor,
And
just for
it's-
the record,
Pardon me?
just for the record, the stipulation doesn't serve as a waiver of anything that we did pre-trial.
Oh, right, no, understood. All right, Then with that, we'll take our break until 10:45. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. We'll see you at 10:45. Court's in session.
Based on what I mentioned yesterday regarding the issues with Mr. Durst, I really think that it does need to be emptied by somebody over the lunch hour, whether Mr. Durst wants it or not. I think it needs to be done. It is, as the court indicated, it is not a medical procedure. You don't make any contact with Mr. Durst. You take the bag and it goes into the toilet. But it does need to be done. And we're requesting that that is done. As I said before, I'm more than happy to do it. The defense, when it was brought up before, I brought it up again to them yesterday. They themselves don't want to do that. I understand that. And Mr. Durst right now, as apparently he does not want me doing it, so it doesn't matter who does it, but someone needs to do it. There are definite issues. If it ends up filling up, it can back up, and he does have, no one is saying that he has not had bladder cancer, which he's been treated for. They're the ones who discovered it at the jail, but we don't want to exacerbate the situation. So that's our request, Your Honor.
Your Honor, unfortunately, Mr. Durst didn't see that because it didn't come across.
Oh, will you tell him what Mr. Lewin
Yes,
said?
let me write it.
About that, Your Honor, we're hopeful
Why don't you
of
turn
getting,
that so I can see the rest of it? Why don't you turn, he can't hear you. Thank you. Yeah.
we're hopeful to get a urology consultation, which we've been hoping for a couple of weeks.
It's Friday.
No, that's Lexus. It's a cardiology, deep Friday thing is cardiology.
The issue of a consultation, et cetera, whatever consultations Mr. Durst is going to have is one thing, but obviously this is very simple. The bag just needs to be emptied. I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Lewin. I'll take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It will inhibit me from making him look like a fool when he cross-examines me. I don't feel badly for him. Is this working?
Yeah, let's go, George.
Is this back up?
I'm gonna get an
Mr. Durst is present with Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chestnut. Council of People are present, led by David and Mr. Balian. Mr. Balian, what will you be presenting next?
The testimony of Randall Burrows, live.
A witness who's present?
Yep.
All right, you may call your witness.
We're doing a full spread today of reading, stipulations, video, and live.
Okay.
Please stand and please stand. Raise your right hand to be sworn. Do you solemnly state that the testimony you may give and the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you, sir. Please be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name.
Randall, R-A-N-D-L-E, Burrows, B-U-R-R-O-W-S.
Thank you, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
So what do you do for a living?
I retired from the Galveston County Sheriff's Office as a lieutenant, but now work part-time for the Galveston County Medical Examiner's Office as a death investigator.
For how long have you been retired and working as a death investigator?
I retired almost 11 years ago, but I've been doing the death investigations part-time for about 15 years.
So let's go back to your work at the Sheriff's Office in Galveston County. What did you do there?
My last 2 years, I was a lieutenant in charge of the Marine Division and Dive Team and Patrol Division. Before that, I worked in investigations, including narcotics, homicide, burglary, robbery, everything.
When you worked for the Sheriff's Department, how many years total was that?
32 years.
And how many years in investigations?
28.
Did that include homicide investigations?
Yes.
When you work currently for the Medical Examiner's Office as a death investigator?
Yes.
Just very briefly, what does that entail?
The death investigator for the Medical Examiner's Office basically is the eyes and ears for the doctors that perform autopsies. When the doctor sees the deceased, it's laying on a table. He has no idea, or she has no idea what happened with this deceased person. So we go to the scenes, we process the scenes, we photograph it, we document, we reports and so forth. That way when the doctor gets our reports and sees the photographs, has some idea of what happened out on that scene.
Do you have some basic training for that position in human anatomy?
Yes.
Have you recovered body parts as part of that job function?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I want to talk about your dive experience. You mentioned something about for 2 years you did something with diving. What is that?
Well, I was a commander of the dive team, Marine Division and dive team for the last 2 years, but I was part of the dive team and the dive team leader for about 10 years with the Sheriff's Office.
So let's talk about what the dive team is. What the dive team at the Sheriff's Office in Galveston County, what are they responsible for?
The dive team is actually responsible for tributaries, Galveston Bay, and anywhere we're assigned to go, bodies of water where items get thrown in there that don't belong there. And it's our job to go in there and make a recovery and process that as potential evidence and get it out of the water.
So I'm not going to limit you specifically to your work on the dive team with the sheriff. I just want to know in general, what your diving experience is. When did you start diving?
I started diving back in the 80s, in the mid 80s, and that's when we started informally diving, recreationally diving and so forth, and formed a definite team.
And have you received training to dive?
Oh, yes.
Is there specific training you've had in terms of searching, in terms of a diver?
Yeah, I was actually an instructor and taught diving, both recreational and public safety diving.
And for how many years did you teach?
Oh, another 10, 11 years.
And when you say public safety diving, what does that encompass?
Public safety diving is just that. That's what dive teams are supposed to do. That's public safety diving as opposed to recreational diving, which is going out and looking at lovely fish and corals and stuff. Public safety diving is diving in water that most people don't want to go in.
Do you do that too? Recreational diving?
Oh, absolutely.
Is there any recreational diving going on in the Gulf of in Galveston Bay?
Not in Galveston Bay, no.
Okay. So I'm going to take you back. Well, before I do that, how many dives do you think you've successfully completed?
Thousands.
How about searches? Diving searches?
If I'd logged every one of them, I'd be doing several dive books, but 500 or so at least.
Okay. And when you say you were on the head of the dive team for the sheriffs in Galveston, I want to take you back to the year 2001. How many people were on that dive team?
That particular, I think we had seven on our team.
Okay. And you were the head of that team?
Yes.
As the head of the team, did you coordinate the dives and figure out exactly what was going to happen?
Yes, plan the dives.
Were you present during the dives?
Yes.
Did you give instructions on what each person's part would be?
Yes.
Did you participate in the dives?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to take you back to this case, the case of the recovered body parts from Morris Black in Galveston. You familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And did you become involved in this case?
I did.
How so?
The original call came to the Galveston Police Department. Their dive team was dispatched and realized that the scene was relatively large area, so they called the sheriff's office for assistance, which is commonplace. I mean, we work together all the time in these dive scenes because more people is better as far as that goes.
And when you arrived, had you been informed that body parts had already been recovered from the water?
Yes.
All right. Those were already removed by the time you got there?
I think there were some that were still in, that had not been removed from the scene, so I got to look at where they were, where they washed up and so forth, but some of them had already been removed.
All right. And was it just yourself, or did you have your entire dive team there?
Oh, the whole team was there.
And was it just the sheriff's dive team that was involved in this particular search, or was there other dive teams?
No, it was the Sheriff's Department dive team who was assisting the Galveston Police Department dive team.
Okay. And the Galveston Police Department had their own separate and distinct dive team?
Yes.
How many people approximately were on scene from Galveston dive team?
8 or 9, maybe 10.
Okay. And were you at some point told what in particular you were looking for?
Oh, yes.
What were you told?
We were looking for any pieces of evidence, but also the head.
Okay, a human head?
Yes.
All right. So did you, first of all, let's describe this area where this search took place. Could you just briefly describe for this jury where this body of water is in relation to Galveston Island?
Galveston Bay is the area between Galveston Island and the mainland of Galveston County. It is has ship channels, the Texas City Ship Channel, the Houston Ship Channel, and the Intracoastal Waterway. But it also is an area of recreational use for fishermen and so forth that is north of Galveston Island, but south of the mainland, if that makes sense.
So this is part of the Gulf of Mexico?
It's attached to the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, and it's called Galveston Bay?
Yes.
All right. So you have Galveston Island, and then you have mainland Texas, and there's a body of water that separates the two of those.
Correct.
And that's the Galveston Bay?
Yes.
Okay. And in particular, which side of the island were you guys searching?
We were on the north side of the island, in the bay proper, between the mainland and Galveston Island. So it'd be north shore of Galveston Island.
I'm going to show you page 1 of what's been marked as People's 184. Do you recognize that area in that photograph?
I do.
And is this the north side of the island that you searched?
Yes.
Do you see that red circle on this?
Yes.
And in particular, is that the area that you were asked to search?
Yes.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked as photo 2, page 2 on People's 184. this another view of that same particular area?
Yes.
Okay. So, before we talk about your search, I just want to ask you a few questions about what the water conditions are like in this area. Let's start first with water movement. The movement of water, currents, whatever you want. What's the proper term?
Well, there's water movement can be determined as far as currents and wave action and tidal flow.
Okay, so what's the water movement like in this particular area on the north side of Galveston Island where this body of water you searched was?
The movement of the water basically depends on the wind direction and also the amount of tide that is rising and falling. It all depends on what time of year and so forth.
So compared to the, say, you go to an area where there's a beach area and you see waves on the beach, something someone would typically experience. Is the movement of water like that in this area in Galveston Bay?
No, it's pretty much along the shore. It's pretty much based on wind currents as far as moving that water towards the shore or away from the shore.
Okay, so are you saying for the most part, the movement of water in this particular area is dependent on the wind conditions?
Yes.
Is it your testimony that, based on your experience, how many times have you dove in Galveston Bay in this particular area?
In that particular area, that day was the only time we dove in that area. But I've dove in Galveston Bay hundreds of thousands, almost 500 or so times.
Okay. And in Galveston Bay, is the movement of the water dependent on the wind conditions? Or is it more this particular area on the north side of this island?
It's difficult to say. In that particular instance, the movement of the water was not that great but it was because of the wind direction. However, there are certain times when currents can be generated from outflow from a lot of rain coming out of the Trinity River or from any of the other, and then also tidal movements out in the channel area. But along that area right there at that particular time, it was all wind generated.
So let's talk about this particular area that you searched. This particular time period you searched. Were you on Galveston Island at this period of time? In
Yes.
The days surrounding the search?
Yes.
And so I want to talk about from September 28th to the day you searched. Are you familiar with what the weather and wind conditions and water conditions were in this area at that particular time?
Yes.
Okay, what was it?
We had a norther blow through, and the wind was actually coming out of the north, blowing from north to south, which was blowing into the shoreline. So the waves that were being generated were actually coming towards the shoreline.
So at that particular time, from the 28th of September to the time when you searched, if you look at the exhibit that's on the screen that you were previously shown, if you're standing on that, let's just take that concrete bulkhead that's sticking out the end of that landmass. Do you see that?
Yes.
You're standing at the end of that concrete bulkhead and you're with your back to the land and your face to the ocean. Which way would the wind be blowing?
Blowing right in my face.
Okay. So then, which way was the water movement in this particular area during that period of time from the 28th of September when you searched?
Towards the shore.
So, let's say a kid went out there and threw a toy boat in the water at the end of that concrete bulkhead, then which direction would that toy boat move?
It's going to come towards the shore.
Okay, any doubt about that?
No doubt.
Okay. And what about something that sunk to the bottom in that particular area? If you hooked it out there at that period of time, if it's light enough to be able to move on the bottom, which way is it going to move?
Well, it's going to go towards the shore, but if it sinks to the bottom, it's probably going to stay pretty close to where it sunk to the bottom.
Okay, so are you saying there's more movement of the water at the surface than at the bottom in this particular area?
Yes. Yes.
So then the wind affects the movement of the surface of the water, but down towards the bottom, it doesn't move as much.
Right. And of course, as deeper as you go, the less effect the wind is going to have.
Okay.
But so close to shore where it's very shallow, you're going to have more effect. But if you're in the deeper water, say 5 or 6 feet, you're not going to have wind affect the movement of the object.
So if something in this period of time, from the 28th forward to when you searched, was thrown and did sink, And if there was enough movement at the bottom, wherever it was, to move it, which direction would it get moved?
It's going to go to the shore, go towards the shore,
Any doubt about that?
no doubt.
So we've talked about the water conditions in terms of movement of the water and the wind conditions. Can you describe for the jury what's the visibility like in this particular area, the water visibility?
Well, as you can see from that picture, it's not very clear. We, as divers, we're referred to as mud divers. We're referred to as chocolate milk divers because every bit of the water in Galveston Bay that we dive in is zero visibility. You can't see anything with your eyes. It's all done with your hands.
Okay, so this is not a recreational diving area?
No, not at all.
All right. Let's talk about the bottom, underneath the water. You walk out there. What's the bottom like?
It's going to be mostly sand. After all, Galveston Island is a barrier island, so it's predominantly sand. But as the water doesn't move, it's going to build up some silty characteristics, but it's predominantly sand.
And is this soft packed sand, hard packed sand? If I'm walking out there, what's it going to feel like?
It's pretty hard. I mean, you may sink down a couple inches, but it's not like it's wading in the mud. It's pretty firm.
And is there a rocky aspect to it?
Along the shoreline, yes. Those rocks that are there are actually placed there by man-made or by man. They weren't there naturally.
So I'm showing you what's been marked as page 21 of this same exhibit, 184. Is this a picture at low tide of the same exact area that we're talking about where you surfed?
Yes, yes.
And you see how near the edges towards the concrete surface sides, there are some rocks placed
Yes,
there?
yes.
And then the rest of it appears to be sand. Is this fairly accurately depict what you're talking about in
Absolutely, yes.
terms of the bottom?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So if it's full of water and I'm walking out there, you say my feet might sink a short amount.
Yeah, a couple of inches, probably. You're going to hit something solid. You hit solid sand.
And is it like I've been to the beach and walked around on the beach, not in the water, and are we talking like that soft of sand or more firm?
Well, the beach in Galveston is different than a beach in California.
Oh, okay.
So,
Which one would I rather go to?
I can tell you, California.
Go ahead.
it's firm sand. It's not a white sand by any means, but it's not powder.
So if something sinks to the bottom, how heavy does it have to be in order to sink completely into the sand where you're not going to see it anymore?
In this particular area, it would take it a long while to sink below the surface of the sand.
Have you said you've recovered body parts before. Have you ever been involved in an investigation where a human head was recovered?
Yes.
And are you familiar, as part of your investigation with the coroner's office, you're familiar with the characteristics of a human head?
Yes.
The weight of a human head?
Yes.
If a human head was thrown into water, would it float or sink from your...
It's going to sink.
It's going to sink, okay. Is that because there's not a lot of cavity areas to hold air?
Correct.
Okay. If a human head was thrown in this area and sunk to the bottom, given your experience, the weight of this head, would it sink below the sand so you couldn't see it?
No.
No. Any chance of that?
No. It's going to be right there.
Okay. So, how deep, now let's talk about the depth. How deep is the water out in this particular area?
Well, you can see from that picture right there, that's right there along the shoreline, inches deep. But as you go out, it has a gradual grade that would go out probably at the end of the pier. We may be looking at 4 to 5 feet. And then farther out, you may get to 7 feet.
So would you describe this as a very deep area,
No,
Galveston Bay?
not at all.
Showing you what page 2 of the same exhibit. So you're saying as you get to the end of that concrete extension on the left, I'm calling it a concrete bulkhead. You understand what I'm referring to?
Yes, I do.
And as you get to the end of that, it's maybe how many feet deep?
4 to 5 feet.
Okay. And to the right of that, you see the protrusion there. It looks like some sort of rocky.
I do.
Okay. Is that like a how would you describe that?
That's
What
a
is
collapsed fishing pier.
that? Okay. Again, same depth in that whole area.
Yes.
So when you say you search this area as a diver, you're not going down very deep diving.
No, not at all.
Okay. All right. So I'd like to talk about what you did. What were your responsibilities in terms of this search?
Well, we divided the entire crime scene up into 2 sections. One section, the Galveston Sheriff's Office dive team is going to search, and the other section, the Galveston Police Department dive team is going to search. Now, that being said, both of our teams are trained the same, strictly because we work together so much, so we all went through the same training. That way, if they were short a diver, one of my divers could just step right in, and we actually even use the same type of equipment. That way, it's all interchangeable. So if we get a bigger scene, that we could all work together as one scene, as one unit. But this particular time, we divided it up into 2. Like I said, the Galveston Police Department team dove to the left of that pier.
So are you talking about this area here?
Yes, they dove to the left and towards shore.
Okay. How far south towards the shore did they go?
All the way till the water was like inches deep, where you could see what was on the bottom.
Okay. And how far out were they searching from the?
About 20 yards past the end of that pier.
Okay. So they searched the whole area about 20 yards to the left of this pier.
Well, they actually went out farther, going to the left of the pier. They went out probably 75 to 100 feet. That's what our ropes are set at, outside the pier. But towards the north, they only went out about 20 yards.
I'll say, when you say the north beyond this.
North, yes,
Okay. Towards the open water.
correct.
Okay. And which area was your team responsible for?
We were responsible for the area between the 2 piers. We searched that area, and actually we actually went around that pier on the right a little bit too, but we searched out into the more open water beyond the piers.
How far out beyond the piers did you guys go?
20, 30, 40 yards, something along that line.
So as a leader of the dive team, and with the background training and experience that you have, did you search an area that you deemed sufficient given the wind and water conditions at the time, given what object you knew you were looking for?
Yes,
Okay. In other words, why didn't you go further out towards the open water?
wouldn't have been out there.
Okay. If it had been thrown out there and moved, which direction would it have moved?
Moved towards the shore.
And you searched the entire area from 20 to 30 yards out past those piers all the way into the shore.
Correct.
And you searched that entire area between those 2 piers.
Yes.
And you searched around that smaller pier.
Well, the other team did, yes. Oh, the smaller pier, yes, you're right.
And the other team searched the area, I'm looking at this photograph, to the left of the larger pier.
Yes.
Okay. Were you satisfied, based on your background training experience, that in total this entire area that was searched was sufficient to find what you were looking for?
Yes.
So describe the search. You can't see down there, so what are you doing?
Basically, everything's done by feel. The diver is crawling along the bottom, and it is feeling the objects that are on the bottom. And anytime he runs into something, he tries to identify it. And in this particular case, if it's something that maybe a rock that's the appropriate size, he could actually stand up and look at it because it was that shallow. But for the most part, they're swimming or crawling along the bottom, feeling the bottom to see what they can find.
So you could stand up out of the water?
Oh, yes, yeah, for the most part. It was like 4 or 5 feet right there. Now, as we got deeper, we couldn't. As we got deeper, we couldn't.
Are you using like snorkels, or do you have dive tanks?
No, we full dive gear.
Okay, so you're able to just focus your efforts on your search and not worry about breathing?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, not that you're not worried about breathing, but right. You weren't deep enough to get the bends, right? You didn't have to
No, not at all.
time your dives? Okay. So, how do you know, do you take any precautions to make sure you know you're searching every square inch?
Absolutely.
What do you do?
Well, we use primarily in a situation like this what's called a tether system. The diver, his sole responsibility is to swim along the line. He's got a tether that comes back to the shore. That tender that holds he's the anchor that holds on to the line. He controls where that diver searches. So that diver is swimming along an arc from starting, for example, inside the bulkhead there. If he's standing right there on where the water meets the shore right there. He's standing right there. He's controlling the diver who's swimming in an arc, swimming away and out into deeper water. So when he gets to the end, the diver stops, or the tender stops him. He lets a little line out, comes back along the line. He stops him when he gets to the shore, lets a little more line out, and you do that all the way out. And once you've completed the distance that we're looking for, you then move the tender to another location and start the process over again, overlapping a lot of the area that's already been searched, which is the main reason we do that.
Let me ask you, so I just know tetherball. Have you ever played tetherball?
Sure.
Okay, so tetherball's got like a metal pole in the middle, and there's a rope attached to it with a ball at the end, and you hit the ball, and the goal is to try to get to circle the pole so there's no more rope, right?
Right.
Okay. So the pole in the tetherball example, would that be what the person you're describing as the tender?
Yes.
Okay. So the tender is at the end of the rope, controlling how far that diver is going to be out. Would the diver be the ball in my example?
Yes.
Okay. And so as the diver is at the end of the rope, in my tetherball example, would the diver be swimming back and forth as far as he can with the ropes allowing him?
Yes.
And when he does that complete arch, would the pole person, what's the pole person called?
The tender.
The tender. Would the tender let out a little more rope and say, okay, swim that arc again?
Yes.
To go back and forth again?
Yes.
And then the tender would let out a little more rope and let him go back and forth again?
Yes.
So is the diver continuing to swim back and forth in an arc, and the arc gets larger and larger and larger until the entire area is covered?
Correct.
And then you move the pole or the
The
tender,
tender, yeah, move it to another location, which we map it out and figure out where we're going to go.
and then you pull the rope in and bring the diver close?
Start over again.
So the diver literally starts like right next to you going back and forth and then goes further and further out.
Yes.
Okay. And you do that from enough points where you're going to cover this entire area.
Yes.
And in fact, from your testimony, you're going to do it in a way that you're going to actually have a bunch of overlaps. So the same area may get covered more than one time.
Correct.
And this was the procedure that you used for the area that your team searched?
Yes.
And did you see the Galveston team doing their search as well?
Absolutely.
And did they follow the same protocols and use the same system?
Yes.
All right. By the way, even though you're separate entities, were you guys basically working as one coordinated team?
Absolutely. We know them. They know us. We know them. So we're interacting with each other the whole time.
Okay. And I assume then if their team had found a head, you would know about it?
Absolutely.
Okay. There'd be some kind of commotion and probably everyone would going to want to go look, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when the diver, the ball in my example, is conducting their arc search, they're literally like on prone position, laid out, feeling the bottom?
Yes.
Okay.
Mostly with a sweeping motion with their hands,
Okay.
feeling along the bottom.
Are you confident, based on your background, training, your experience, and what you saw that day, that all these areas you described were completely and thoroughly searched?
Yes.
Did you find a head?
No.
Did the Galveston team find a head?
No.
No one found a head.
That's correct.
If a head was dumped, let's assume that these body parts were found between those two bulkheads. You were told generally where these body parts were found?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And assume someone threw those body parts off of that pier on the left there. First of all, if they throw it at the end of the pier, the body parts could go either direction from that pier.
Yes.
They can go to the left or to the right. Yes?
Yes, they could.
If you're standing on that bulkhead, you could throw some to the right, some to the left.
Sure.
Okay. Were you satisfied, based on the search that you conducted, strike that, if someone had thrown those body parts at the same spot at the same time, with the head thrown in at the same spot at the same time, would you have found the head?
Absolutely.
You have any doubt about that?
No doubt.
So in your opinion, was that head thrown in the same spot at the same time as those other body parts?
No.
Any doubt about that whatsoever?
No. Because if it had been done there, we'd have found it.
What about marine animals? Was there any marine animals that live in this bay area that could have carried that head away?
The only marine animals that might be there in that area would be blue crabs, which are about the size of my hand at biggest. They're not going to move ahead. They may eat on it, but they're not going to move it.
Any doubt about that?
No.
There's no giant crabs in Galveston Bay that could
No.
have carried that head away?
Despite the picture of the one on front of Guido's, that was not the one caught in Galveston Bay.
Okay. What about like sharks? Are there sharks at this time in this area?
Not in that vicinity, no.
No.
Maybe farther out in the channel and stuff, but not in that. It's too shallow for them to be up in there.
Okay. So do you have any doubt in your mind whatsoever, based on what you did and what you saw, that that head was not deposited in the well?
No doubt.
Assuming it was not deposited at the same time with those other body parts? Any doubt about that?
It was not deposited in that area before we were there.
Of course, it's possible that somebody deposited all the stuff at one time and then ripped open one of the bags, came back later and took the head.
It's possible.
That's pure speculation.
Overall. That's possible.
Okay, that would be another explanation for not having a head there, right?
Yeah, before we got there, yeah.
Okay. Any other scenario where you can conceive of why that head would not be found?
Those two. It was thrown and recovered and removed, or it wasn't thrown at all.
Okay. What about a slope? Is there a slope in that area, like away from shore, where the head could have rolled on the bottom away?
No, it doesn't really. It's a gradual grade to go down. It's very. It's not. I wouldn't even call it a slope.
Given your knowledge of a human head, if it had been thrown in and sunk to the bottom, would it have been in your search area?
Yes, it would have been there.
Okay. And you didn't find it?
Did not find it.
Thank you. Nothing further?
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Mr. Burrows. I'm Dick DeGuerin, and I represent Bob Durst along with my co-counsel. We've never met, have we?
Oh, yes, we have.
Really? When?
I've gone up against you many times in Galveston County.
In other cases?
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe it's the mask.
Probably. And the hair, too. I had longer hair back then.
Longer than that?
Quite a bit longer, actually.
Okay. Well, now you got me thinking about trying to remember what case it was. Well, maybe we'll spend a few minutes when we don't waste the jury's time about that. At any rate, how long had the bags been in the water, if you know, before you started your search?
I do not know.
You started your search on what day, please?
It would be, I guess, September the 29th, that evening, I believe, 2001. The 30, okay, a long time ago.
I was gonna look at the reports, I thought it was the 30th. So I think we can
We'll stipulate
stipulate.
it was the 30th.
And it was at night?
It was in the evening, yes.
Okay. Do you know when the bags that contained the other body parts were found?
No, when I got the call to go out there, the Galveston Police Department was already on the scene, and in fact, the medical examiner was already there as well. And those recoveries had been made before I
Okay.
got there.
If there's information that it was about 6 o'clock in the evening when the boy and his stepfather discovered the torso, would that be consistent with what you know?
Sure.
All right, so you were there 4 to 6 hours after
Yes.
the discovery of the bags, right?
Correct.
And I take it that your search took hours
Very much so, yeah.
How-
Into the next day.
into the next morning? You have to answer
Yes,
audibly.
yes.
And you said that there was a norther that had blown in.
Correct.
Now, we might have to explain out here in California what a norther is. And maybe we even explain what a blue norther is. It's cold air that comes down from the north blowing toward the south. Is that a apt description?
Fair, yes.
There's a saying in Texas that there's nothing but barbed wire fence between there and the North Pole. You've heard that, haven't you?
I have.
When did the norther blow in?
I don't remember.
You mentioned that the wind is an influence on the movement of water, and there was a north wind at the time you were there. I believe it says beginning at 2000 hours. That'd be 8 o'clock, right?
Sure. I mean, that's.
Military
2000
time,
hours.
2000 hours.
2000 hours is 8 o'clock, but
Okay, that PM, right?
yes.
Had the norther blown in that day?
When I got there that evening and was looking and evaluating the scene about what we were going to do, the wind was blowing in my face as I was standing on the bulkhead.
Okay.
Time factor, I don't have a clue what time it was.
Are there published tide and current figures?
Yes,
Did you check those?
no,
And so we can understand that the published tide and current figures are done by the some national federal agency, right?
sure, they're done, but they're also at a specific location, not that location. They're done for various locations, like the entrance to Galveston Bay, to the Texas City Dike, to the entrance to Clear Lake, these areas like this, but not at that specific location. So they're going to be off by a few hours.
But there are multiple locations where those measurements are taken and
Sure.
recorded and reported.
Yes,
And there are also forecasts as to the tides and currents, right?
correct.
And you did not check those either.
I did not.
So, were you aware that bags either containing body parts or evidence were found along on both sides of that concrete pier,
Yes,
and that one set of bags in particular, 3 bags, were found some 500 feet or 500 paces away from where the torso was found.
Okay.
Were you aware of that?
No.
Is it correct that there were bags that were found on both sides of the pier that we're looking at?
Yes.
All right. And were you aware that there was a set of bags, 3 that appeared to have been in each other, that were empty of body parts?
At the time, I was not aware, but I am now.
Okay, you've been made aware of it at
Yes.
some time. When were you made aware of that?
Oh, gosh, a number of years ago, but it was somewhat after it was, I guess, it would have been before the trial in Galveston.
All right. Now, you did not testify in the trial in Galveston, did you?
Correct.
Did they tell you weren't going to testify because they'd found some empty bags?
No.
The empty bags had tears in them, or slits in them, that were from 2.5 to 3 feet big. Did you know that?
I had heard that, yes.
If one of those bags, or if they were concentric, that is, one bag inside another bag inside another bag, and they all had that slit in it, if the head had been in that, that'd be plenty of room for a head to come out of the bag, wouldn't it?
Depends on how long the slits were.
2.5 to 3 feet.
I'd have to look at. I can't make a decision based. Sorry, I can't make a decision based on your description.
Okay, well, let me tell you that we've stipulated, that we've agreed, right before you testified, that the slits in those bags were from 2.5 to 3 feet. 2.5 to 3 feet. I'm just guessing with my hands right now. That's plenty big enough for a head to come out of that bag, right?
Okay.
Is it?
I guess it's possible.
Now, the wind is one factor in the movement of the water, but tides are also a factor in the movement of water, right?
Correct.
And as a longtime Galveston resident, you know that the tides can be several feet. That is, raising and lowering of the water several feet.
Oh, in extreme circumstances, yes, but for the most part, the tidal flow is not more than a foot and a half at the most.
And the tides operate several times a day, don't they?
In some cases, yes.
Well,
there are times that there's only one tide a day in a 24-hour period.
okay, did you check to see how many tides there had been that day or preceding that day when you were out there?
I did not.
Was the tide coming in or going out when you were out there diving?
Don't know.
Or did it change while you were there?
I don't recall.
Now, the picture that's on the screen, what number is that? Yeah.
Page 2 of
People's Exhibit 184.
Okay. The picture's on the screen. That almost looks like blue water, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's not what the water in Galveston Bay looks like, is it?
Not routinely, no.
Or on that day.
The water that we were in was pretty muddy.
And by pretty muddy, you mean maybe you can see an inch or so in front of your
not
face
even
mask?
that.
Not even that far?
Not even that.
Okay. So you're relegated to having to feel
Yes.
the bottom of the water.
Bottom. Yeah. The bottom. Yes.
And it's true, isn't it, that Galveston Bay is very large, but it's also very shallow.
For the most part, yes.
And by very large, we're talking about miles and miles across at places, aren't we?
Correct.
Let me, if we can, got a couple of maps here. Let me make sure that we can agree. We'll mark these.
You want me to move these?
Yeah. Could I have a defendant's exhibit number, please, ma'am?
D as in David.
D is in David? God, I'd like to mark three charts as D, 1, 2, and 3. All right. So here's D1. I'm assuming you're familiar with nautical charts,
I am.
and does that appear to be a nautical chart of Galveston Island, part of Galveston Bay, which would be the beginning of the East Bay, and well, is that what that is?
Yes.
All right. Now, the area where you searched is toward the north side of Galveston Island. About, can you point to it on that screen? I think it is about in here, isn't it?
No, that's,
Tell me where to move the pen.
that's gonna be where the causeway is. It moves farther to your right and up, right around in there, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah, I believe that's it right there.
all right. I'm just going to put a circle around that general area. Is that about correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. Now, of that area, you searched, of course, we don't have a scale here. You searched as much as 75 to 100 feet out from the shoreline,
Yes,
but no further.
no further.
And so what's out here?
That's pretty much all open water. A lot of fishermen like to go out in there and drift fish. And there's actually another channel up farther up. You see where it says 6.9, 5.9. That's an old channel that comes into this where Pier 77 channel is right there. So it's pretty much all open water, just shallow.
Okay, in fact, that open water goes all the way up to, I'll mark this as D3. This is a little bit larger perspective of the Galveston Bay area and Galveston Island. Where I'm pointing being Galveston Island, correct?
Correct.
And Galveston Bay being this blue part, that's East Galveston Bay, and West Galveston Bay down toward the west. Is that
Actually, this is West Bay here.
right?
East Bay is up above Bolivar Peninsula.
Uh-huh.
And then Galveston Bay is right there in the center and goes up towards Trinity Bay and up in that area. That's all the Galveston Bay complex.
Right. So how many miles is it across? Let's first start across from where you did your search over to Texas City. That's probably the closest.
Well, where you're pointing, that's Pelican Island. Farther down.
Pelican is right here,
No, that's Pelican Island. The
Right.
search area is farther down.
right? About where I'm pointing now?
Kinda, but more to your left.
Well,
If you give, may I have the pointer?
I don't know if we've got a pointer.
We got one.
Will that work? Usually doesn't work on projection.
All right.
Perfect.
Oh,
Nice.
That's
Okay.
why, that's why his face mask says champ.
Put the other one back up.
who wants the other one, Dick?
Oh, you want the other one? Okay.
I'll show you about where you're referring to.
On the screen now will be D3. That's
Yes,
zoomed out.
This area here is Pelican Island, and this is where the causeway goes across to get to mainland, to Galveston Island. So just north of there, around that G, I guess that's a G. Right in that vicinity is where we're talking about.
Okay. And so my question was, we can see Texas City
Oh,
here. How far is it from where you were, your search area, to Texas City?
several miles. I don't know exactly.
Between 3 and 5 miles?
Yeah, several miles.
Okay. So we have that perspective that if the search area is where we've circled, it's 3 to 5 miles across here. None of this was
Well-
searched, right?
Actually, this is the mainland right here.
Yes.
This is the railroad bridge and crosses to Galveston Island. So however, when you talk about from here to the mainland as a direct line, it's not gonna be 3 to 5 miles, because the causeway is not 3 to 5 miles long. But it's at least 2 miles probably, maybe 1.5 miles.
Okay, so you searched at maximum 100 feet from the shore, but there's a couple of miles, several miles, depending on which direction you go, of open bay.
Yes.
Okay, of course, this nautical map doesn't have the highways or roads in Galveston, or in this neighborhood in Galveston, or any other roads for that matter. But this brown area that's on the screen, that's all Galveston Island, right?
Correct.
In fact, there's a blue area down here that's just a bio, or what we call a bio, Offutt's bio, right?
That's correct.
And here's another, a little bit more perspective. This will be D2. This is zoomed out a little bit. Offutt's bio is about where I'm pointing here, right?
Yes.
And but Galveston Island is on both sides of Offutt's bio.
Yes.
And the search area, again, was out here.
Correct.
Mr. Guerin's placed a circle on the.
Placed a circle on D3.
Perfect. So it's like.
D2.
Is that D2 or D3? That's D2, you're right. Sorry. Okay, so this gives us a little bit more perspective about the distance between the search area and the rest of the bay, particularly the closest point of land would be about where I'm pointing, right?
Okay,
And
yes.
that's at least the length of the causeway, and the causeway is 2 miles?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Did you ever go, how many days were you out there, by the way?
We was out there day and a half.
Okay. Did you ever go back and try to go further out into the bay?
No.
Is there commercial fishing activity out in the bay there?
Out in the bay, yes.
And that's like shrimp boats?
Yes,
Shrimp boats generally drag nets.
correct.
And how close to the shore do those shrimp boats get?
They are not very, because it's too shallow for them. They'd be running the shrimp boat aground.
Right. But then later out in the bay, there's 5 to 7 feet.
Farther away from land, yes, I mean, you're looking probably several hundred yards that they would stay offshore, which, quite honestly, I've never seen a shrimp boat there.
And
Yeah,
there are several channels that are cut through there. Is that right?
Yes,
Channels that are dredged.
well, they used to be, not anymore.
I mean, particularly the intercoastal canal or the intercoastal waterway,
The intercoastal is, yes.
and that goes all the way from Jacksonville, Florida, to the tip of Texas in Brownsville, doesn't it?
Yes.
Big boats go on that,
Yeah, that runs right here.
right? And there's also the Houston Ship Channel, right?
Correct.
And the Texas City Ship Channel, right?
Yes.
And those are channels that are dug, dredged to depth enough for large boats, ships, to use them, right?
Yes.
To 40 feet, 50 feet?
No, I'm trying to remember what the, it's been so long. They're dredged to a certain depth, and I can't remember what it is, but it's probably 25 feet or so. Because the length of their vessels are limited as far as, and even our channels there are not meant to bring in the super tankers, which would have a much greater depth. But those ship channels are, I want to say 25 to 30 foot deep.
You're not talking about the Houston Ship Channel?
I'm talking about the Texas City Channel.
Yeah.
And Texas City Channel and the intercoastal. The intercoastal is 17 foot deep.
But that, probably not important, but that the intercoastal accommodates tugboats and barges.
Correct.
So, as far as the search was concerned, to sum it up, you searched an area of how many, can you estimate how many square feet you searched?
I got a calculator, I can calculate it. You saw the area that I outlined, but just that area that I outlined on direct.
Right. Now, we know from something about the distance of where the bags that still had body parts in them were found, and the 3 bags that had the big slit in it were found. That was something like 500 paces away from and on the other side of the pier, right?
Like I said, I don't know where those were found.
We've had a stipulation about that.
Okay.
Assuming that they were found some 500 paces and on the other side of the pier, that means that those bags, if they were all thrown in at the same place, that means that those bags had traveled that far in the time between when they were thrown in and when you were there, right?
Well, that would actually make sense
Yeah.
due to the fact that there was nothing to hold them down at all. The wind, they were really subject to the wind. It's like throwing a feather into the wind. It's going to blow wherever it wants to blow.
But the answer is, that's correct. They had gone 500 paces, assuming that we have our stipulation. They'd gone 500 paces from the other bags,
Okay?
and they were empty, right?
Okay? Yes.
Did you know that?
I do now.
Okay. And did you know that they were found with Morris Black's blood in them?
I assumed that they were, yes.
Okay. I believe that's all.
Yes, please. When you say you searched 75 to 100 feet from the shoreline in response to Mr. DeGuerin's questions, I just want to be clear. When you say shoreline, you're talking about all shore protrusions, is that right?
Oh, yes.
So in other words, if you've got page 2 of People's 184, those 2 piers again, you search that entire area between those 2 piers
Yes.
and beyond the amount you've indicated.
Yes.
And then to the left side of it, looking at this photograph, as well was searched the distance you've already indicated.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. DeGuerin asked you why you didn't search the entire Gulf of Mexico, or not Gulf of Mexico, but Galveston. You understand the question I'm talking about?
I do.
Why didn't you search the entire Galveston Bay?
When we got to that scene that day, that night, we met with the investigators, we met with the crime scene guys. Based on the information that we were given by them, we as a dive team prepared a plan. When I say prepared a plan, we divided the scene in half. Galveston police took one half and we took the other half. And in that plan, we decided how far out. And we were also limited the tether that I spoke about earlier. The line that is being held by the tender is 75 foot long. We have a 100-footer, but we don't like to use it because it becomes more cumbersome the farther out you go. We can use it, but it's more cumbersome the more length. So we made this plan, and every place that we put this tender, that's how far that guy searched.
And when you formulated this plan, did you take into consideration the water and wind conditions?
Sure.
So you could have certainly taken that rope 5 miles offshore into the shipping channels, right?
If we had a boat, we could have gone out there, and yes, sure.
Okay, so would you have gone out to the main body of water in the shipping channels and searched out there?
We didn't need to,
Okay, and why didn't you need to?
because the wind conditions, based on the information we received, the wind conditions, the water conditions at that time, the area that we searched, we would have found the head if it was there.
And what does the Galveston Bay drain into?
The Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, did you search the Gulf of Mexico?
Did not.
Why not?
Didn't need to.
Okay, so I want you to assume, so what you're saying is based on the wind conditions, anything that was in there thrown from that area, from that pier, would have blown back to shore.
Sure.
And you searched all the areas that would have contained items that floated in that area.
Yes.
Okay. If, as part of the sheriff's department, if a head was found on Galveston Island, would you become aware of that?
Yeah,
Okay. After that search, was any head ever found on the shoreline?
it was not.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked as page 19 with People's 184. See that red circle area?
I do.
I want you to assume that that's the stipulated 500 paces to the east where this other bag was found. Can you orient yourself to where that was found in relation to the area you searched?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm going to show you page 20 of the same exhibit, and that's actually an example, a photograph of these bags that were found in that area. So you see how these are found on shore?
Yes.
Is that consistent with the wind and water conditions of what you're describing of where you would expect it to be found?
Yes.
Does it surprise you that one of the bags was found in that area,
No.
given the wind conditions?
Absolutely not.
And these bags float, right?
Yes.
Like a boy who throws a toy boat into the water, if the wind is pushing it, it's going to get pushed, right?
Correct.
I want you to assume, you know where the railroad tracks are?
I do.
Okay, I want you to assume that entire shoreline was searched from the area you searched all the way to the railroad tracks.
I do know that the shoreline was walked by Galveston police officers.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I want you to
Okay.
assume it was searched and no head was found, okay? Is there any other areas you could think of where that head would have gone?
If it had been thrown at that location, no.
No. Okay. And if it would have rolled, it would have, or moved underwater, it would have moved towards shore. Is that right?
Yeah, if it would, it wouldn't have rolled, but yes.
If it were floating in a bag, it would have floated to shore.
Yes.
And no one found it.
No one found.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Briefly. Your search plan was based on the conditions you found at the time you went there.
Correct.
And the conditions at the time you went there, a norther had blown in at some time that you don't know, right?
Before I got there.
Right.
Yes.
And you don't know how long that had been.
No.
And so your plan and your conclusions are based on the conditions that you found when you were there.
And the items that had been recovered. That was part of the plan as well.
It's true, isn't it, that the prevailing wind in Galveston is from the southeast?
Correct.
Exactly the opposite of the norther that you found when you went there.
Correct.
That's all.
No, thank you.
Can this witness be excused?
Yes.
You're excused, sir. Thank you. Excused?
Yes, thank you.
You'll wait 5 minutes, we can visit.
Okay.
All right, I'll give you that chance now because we're going to break until 1:30. Ladies and gentlemen, do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. 1:30.